Exploring ExtraFax for Microsoft Exchange and Microsoft 365. Organization Management Overview, Part 2. To configure Active Directory synchronization rules that will populate the user's view in ExtraFax, under Organization Management, select the User Synchronization view and create a new synchronization rule. Step 1. Specify a name and description for the User Synchronization rule, and then set Enabled to Yes. Step 2. Select users by container, group, or individually to be synchronized. In this example, the entire users container has been selected. In Step 3, specify whether or not to add synchronized users into an ExtraFax group. The default selection for this option is shown. In Step 4, now that the user synchronization rule has been configured, specify whether or not to synchronize now or according to the schedule in Organization Settings. The default selections are shown. When the document is saved, the specified configuration settings will go into effect. For Microsoft 365 tenants that do not have an on-premise Active Directory that is synchronized to Microsoft 365, it is possible to import users from Microsoft 365 to ExtraFax using OAuth 2.0. Though the specific steps required for this configuration are not covered in this tutorial, we do have a very concise FAQ document on our website that provides all configuration steps in fine detail. While browsing the FAQs, look for the document titled Connect ExtraFax for Exchange with Microsoft 365 for more information. The Organization Management Users view is where ExtraFax users can be maintained. The list of users that will appear in this view can either be a local user or a user that has been imported from Active Directory or Microsoft 365. At a view level, easily distinguish between which users are local users and which ones have been imported from Active Directory or Microsoft 365. Imported users will have a black down arrow next to the blue person icon, whereas local users will only be depicted with the blue person icon. Both user types are seen in this example. Conveniently add a local user, one at a time, or import many local users based on information in a CSV file. When adding a new local user, all editable fields are shown here. It is also possible to update the active status as needed. The new local user can also be added into a user group if desired. Implementing user groups makes assigning and maintaining user permissions more seamless instead of having to assign permissions to users individually. In this example, there's an Active Directory user. Active Directory users are not created manually. This user type is created and maintained automatically via a user synchronization rule. When editing the profile for an Active Directory user, the only fields that can be edited are the active status and the user group field. The same is also true for users that are synchronized from Microsoft 365. User groups can be maintained in the Organization Management User Groups view. Groups can be easily created, edited, or deleted as needed. When creating or editing user groups, there are a couple of important things to remember. At any given time, users can only be members of one group. Assigning a user to a group will remove membership from their original user group, if any. User preferences can be maintained in the Organization Management User Preferences view. Documents can be easily created, edited, or deleted as needed. Documents can also be created from CSV files. Starting in the General Information section, easily assign a user preference document to an individual, multiple individuals, or to a group of individuals. In this example, the user preference document is being assigned to the group named Fax Users. The user preferences document can also be enabled or disabled as needed. In the Outbound Settings section, start by configuring a default cover page that should be used. Whether or not to enforce the use of a default cover page can also be enabled. If there's a chargeback model in place for using fax services, be sure to assign a billing code in the user preference document in order to keep track of fax usage and costs for billing purposes. It is important to understand the fax attachments only parameter. When set to yes, ExtraFax will only process file attachments. No cover page will be included. If it is important to always send a cover page, set this parameter to no. Whether or not to enforce the use of this parameter can also be enabled. Next, specify whether or not to save a copy of outbound faxes, and if so, identify the preferred file format. For example, TIFF, PDF, searchable PDF, PDFA, or searchable PDFA. Selecting searchable PDF file formats requires Adobe Acrobat or ABBY Recognition Server to be installed on the ExtraFax server. By default, ExtraFax will only notify the fax sender when there's a problem delivering a fax. If the fax sender wants to be notified even when a fax has been successfully sent, be sure to configure the delivery report parameters in the user preference document. To configure a preferred port that should be used for outbound faxing, select the desired port. If left blank, any available port will be used. If security policy or other regulations state that fax content should be deleted from the ExtraFax server after it has been sent, configure this option. Even though fax content can be deleted, there will still be a sent log that remains on the server with basic summary information about the fax transmission. If there is a requirement to have a fax go through an approval process before it is sent, set the approval flow parameter to yes and specify the chain of approval. In a user preference document, cover page contact information for a sender can be populated dynamically from information within the user's profile or from organization settings. If no contact information has been populated in their user profile, contact details can be manually entered into the user preference document. Lastly, one of the final parameters to configure in the user preference document is that if there is a chargeback model in place for using inbound fax services, be sure to assign a billing code in the user preference document in order to keep track of fax usage and costs for billing purposes. We hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. To learn more about our products, please visit our website for more product information and additional tutorials. Visit us at www.extracomm.com.